Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay, very good. So let me share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So what we were discussing? So we were discussing about the selective transportation of species. It can be molecules, it can be ions, it can be anything actually. Okay, it can be complex molecule also. So if you want to have some DNA molecule, or if you want to have some polymer molecule, so you can use actually. So I also mentioned hydrogen isotope separations also. So the membrane technology, science and technology is very exciting because it has lots of applications. I also mentioned about blocking corona particles, coronavirus. Okay, so you want to make your membrane in such a way that you don't want this virus to be transported to your lungs, isn't it? But you want your oxygen to be transported. So you want membranes, with selective permeation properties. So that is what we were discussing. So we also found that these 2D materials are very, very exciting because we can make it very thin. We can make the ultimate membrane. So that is the one of the the major advantage of 2D materials, because flux through the membrane is inversely proportional thickness. So if you make your thickness very small, the flux is going to be very high. But the other problem is actually the selectivity. That is what I discussed. But you can always fine tune your membrane properties so that you can achieve desired permeation properties. All right. So you can choose different 2D materials depending upon the application you are looking at. Okay. So we have discussed the graphene oxide, which is actually made from graphite. So I also mentioned that there is some intercalation of water layers in between the graphene oxide layers. So we have fairly good idea about the microstructure of graphene oxide. It forms a kind of laminar structure, just like graphite. Okay. I hope you remember what I have discussed in the last lecture. Yeah. So this is what the laminar structure look like. Okay. And there is a new periodicity. We know that graphite has an interlayer spacing of 3.4 angstrom. From layer to layer, there is a separation of 3.4 angstrom. But in the case of graphene oxide, there is an interlayer spacing between the flakes. Okay, this between graphene layers. So this is actually much more than 3.4 angstrom. I said it is something like 8 angstrom to 14 angstrom. Okay, it is not just very sharp. It's not single crystalline, but it kind of broadened peak. Means in some, so that is what I try to estimate. So this is what the X-ray diffraction peak look like. If you do X-ray diffraction, so X-ray diffraction can tell you the periodicity of the structure. It can estimate the lattice constant. And X-ray diffraction is generally used to characterize crystalline materials. It can tell you the ordering. Okay, so we have some kind of ordering here because of these van der Waals interactions. Okay, so I mentioned that we have some water layers in between, and the permeation is quite fast. So we try to compare different models. What is the state of the water molecule inside? We tried with water vapor experiments, water vapor measurements, and we said that if the water inside the layers is still in vapor state, it doesn't explain the final permeation flux. the flux we get, in experiments is much, much higher, 10 to the power 14, 10 to the power 4, 10,000 times larger than that estimated for vapor transport. Okay, so that is why we try to understand based on the liquid transport. So we assume that water inside is like a liquid, behaving like a liquid molecules. Okay, so liquid molecules means between water molecules there is strong interaction, but in the gaseous state it doesn't have any interaction. All right, it is a weak interaction. So we try to estimate the number of water layers based on the spacing. So we said if you have 8 Armstrong spacing, so this is called a dry state. Still you can estimate the number of water layers it can accommodate between the layers. So this is coming out to be 1 to 2 layers of water molecules. So 8 Armstrong, that is a dry state. So when I say dry state, that means your humidity is really small. So you see, even at very small humidity conditions, still you have 1 to 2 layers of water molecules intercalated. And experiment shows that it is very hard to remove this 1 to 2 layers of water molecules. Okay, and when you immerse the graphene oxide in water, the interlayer actually expands. It accommodates 3 to 4 molecules of layers of water molecules. Okay, 3 to 4 layers. So there is an expansion, and that is why the X-ray diffraction peak is very broad, because at some point there will be 3. It cannot be 3.5 anyway. It has to be 3 or 4. So at some point there will be 3 layers of water molecule, and some point there will be 4 layers of water molecules. Okay, so this is actually discrete. So, but overall, if you see, this actually the number of water layers will be 3 to 4. So this is about the water transport. So now I am going to discuss about the ion transfer, ion sieving. How can you selectively transport ions through the membranes? Okay, the main application is desalination, because we want to remove ions, we want to block ions from seawater, and we only want to transport the water molecules. So can we design such a membrane where we want to have selective transportation of water molecules? Okay, so the important point is that when you compare with the free ions inside, if you put sodium chloride, for example, so sodium and chlorine, they are bound by ionic bond, isn't it? So now as soon as it is dissolved, it is actually interact with liquid water. So what happens? The energy, there's an increasing energy, and it has to actually dissociate to compensate that. So there is a dissociation process, and through this dissociation process, the ions takes water molecules because they are electrostatically active. So these ions, sodium plus and chlorine minus, they are surrounded by water molecules. Okay, so any process has to minimize the energy. So this is the minimization process where ions in aqueous solutions, okay, in water solvents, ions actually form hydrated ions. They are not simple ions, they are hydrated. You can estimate actually for each ion how many water molecules are surrounding them. Okay, it all depends on the radius of the ion and also the charge. Okay, so it is actually the Coulomb potential, Z square by R. So that decides how strongly it is attractive to water molecules. So some ions will form smaller hydrated radius or hydrated size, and some other ions will form bigger hydrated diameters. Okay, so this is different from what you have typically seen. So when I say ionic radii, so in aqueous solutions, it means it is hydrated ionic radii. Okay, because it is now bigger. So I can give you a number. So this is typically known as the hydrated ions. Okay, not simple ions. So typically the ionic radius is like 1 to 2 Armstrong. So 1 to 2 Armstrong. So, but in the case of hydrated ions, the sizes of the ions are something like this, because we know that water molecule size is 2.8 Armstrong. So you can imagine that on both sides you have water molecule. Okay, so the diameter has now at least it has to be 2.8 plus 2.8, that is 5.6 plus ionic size. So that will give you an estimate on the hydrated ionic size. So if I say you these are the sizes of the typical sea salt or common salt ions, typically used in experiments. So for example, potassium K plus. So this is hydrated K plus. So it has 6.6 Armstrong. Cl minus. These are all hydrated sizes, hydrated diameters. DH is the hydrated diameter. So you see, these are all in the range of 6 to, around 6 to 9 Armstrong. So what you have to do actually, if you want to, block these ions, so mainly actually in sea water, mainly it is, what is that you have? Can someone of you tell me what is the majority of the ion in the sea salt or sea water?
Sodium chloride.
Sodium chloride, yes. Then
Magnesium chloride.
yeah, that's right. Yes, magnesium also. So we have magnesium, then sulfates also. Okay. So some of these ions are present in sea salt. So that is why typical experiments, if you see, these are all done with these salts. Okay, so that it can actually be useful for a particular application. So if you want to design something, if you want to block, if you want to have desalination, your membrane size has to be of this, the membrane means the channel size has to be of this order. But it is very difficult actually to have this kind of sizes. But now recently, because of this, all this nanopore technology or, this graphene oxide. So you see in the dry state, actually, this is something very similar to what we have here, isn't it? The dry state, I said it is 8 Armstrong. So graphene oxide channels have sizes close to this. Okay, so some of the ions can be blocked, not all of them, maybe bivalent ions. So if you have an experiment, if you want to conduct an experiment, this is the way you do. So you have sea salt, sea water on one side and fresh water on the other side. So this is known as the feed and the permeate. Okay, feed has the higher concentration of salt and permeate has the lower concentration. So ideally what you want is, we want the fresh water from this side to go to the other side. We don't want any salt to mix with the fresh water. Okay, so but the problem is, because of osmotic pressure, the water from this side actually goes to mix with the sea water. So this is known as the osmotic process, osmosis. So if I say, see, this is what the content of sea water. So we have majority sodium chloride, then magnesium sulfates, see, potassium, calcium. So these are small. So majority is sodium chloride, and they are monovalent. And we have seen from the size, see, sodium chloride, the size is something here, you see, 6 to 7. I mean 6 to 6.6 to 7.1. I mean, this is not very very accurate, but around this size. So typical membranes have these kind of forms. It can be 2D. The channels can be 2D. That is what we have discussed. The graphene oxide. It's a 2D laminate. Okay, 2D channels. You can have pores, nanopores or sub-nanometer pores, where it is 0-dimensional. Okay, and you can have wires also, 1-dimensional wires like carbon nanotube. You can make a membrane out of carbon nanotube, okay, or silicon nanowires. If you can make it really small, and you have to make it multiple, because if you just use one channel, then it's not going to be have enough flux. So you want your flux to be very high. You cannot wait for months to get 1 liter of water. So you want your flux to be very high. So obviously you will use multiple of these channels. millions of these channels. Graphene oxide, actually, fortunately, you can make this into large scale. You can have millions of laminates. So that is the, that is the motivation behind the graphene oxide research, that kind of, membranes give you high water flux and it can be easily synthesized. So this is what the main attraction of laminates. But if you talk about pores, I'm going to discuss that soon. It is not that scalable, pores and wires. Okay, so laminates are scalable, easily scalable, because it is made through a chemical process. So you have the possibility of large scale. All right, but there are some issues. I'll discuss that. So you might already, guess what is the issue with this. Can someone tell me what is the issue with graphene oxide? From this number, maybe. I have to pick someone. Kailash. Is Kailash there?
Hello. Yes, sir. I'm here.
Okay. So what do you think? What is the problem with graphene oxide? See, I said, okay, this is what in the wet state. Obviously, you have to immerse graphene oxide in water, isn't it? If you want to have this kind of experiment. So your interlayer space 14 Armstrong. So is it useful? Is it useful for desalination? See, from the number I gave, so here I want to have desalination. So is it possible to separate salt? Is it possible to block salt ions?
Not really, actually, sir.
Yeah. So it's not possible actually. So if you, you really want to have, so this is actually a problem because graphene oxide, you see that from low humidity to high humidity, the interlayer actually expands. At some point, this actually pushes. You have water layers in between, and that actually is kind of, a pressure on the layers. At some point of time, this completely disintegrate because they are not mechanically very stable. There's nothing to stop. There is nothing to hold them. You understand? So either you have to use some mechanical support from both sides, mechanical clamp, like in normal RO systems. People do, because the active membrane is sandwiched between two other membranes, so that you don't have the expansion. You actually have some mechanical, strength, mechanical stability. So this is the major problem with this kind of laminates, that mechanically they are weak. Okay, and also the spacing is larger. So now the question is, can you make it smaller? Can you make it smaller than 14 Armstrong? Can you make it something like this? Because the main problem with graphene oxide is that it's hydrophilic and it is water loving. It takes actually too much water molecules. So maybe you have to think something which is not very strongly hydrophilic. Maybe that can help. Okay, so I already gave you some, direction. Or maybe hydrophobic, or weakly hydrophilic or hydrophobic. Then it can accommodate maybe smaller layers of water molecules. So typical experiments, this is done, is this way actually. So you have seawater on one side and fresh water on the other side. So which is separated by a membrane. Okay. So this is known as the dead end filtration. Okay. So this is dead end. So, but in real applications, you might see a different kind of configuration. So for all practical purposes, for all fundamental purposes, this is the way it is done. Okay, because then what is exactly happening here. because you can measure the flux the other side. So typically, so now if you see here the concentration of ions, so concentration of ions here very large because you have ions inside the seawater, and you don't have any ions here or very less. So then what happens? There is a difference of ions. So obviously there will be a diffusion. So the diffusion process is governed by the Fick's law. So this is the diffusion current J, which is proportional to the concentration gradient. So if I take the one-dimensional transport, it is dC by dx, where dC is the difference in concentration between these containers, reservoirs. So this is governed by the Fick's law. So this diffusion process actually gives you the permeation at the other side. So one can monitor the salt concentration this side, okay, permeate side. So if there are no salt ions permeating through this, then that means you have achieved the desalination. So you have desalination through the membrane. Okay. So for example, if you design a membrane such that it is smaller than the actual size of the ions, hydrated size of the ions, then you can block most of the ions, but only water molecules will be transported. Okay. So here, so this is what the typical forward osmosis, that because we have a high concentration of water here, solvent, and low concentration of water here. Okay. So then what happens? Because of osmosis, this fresh water goes to this side. So this is what is known as the osmosis process. Okay. So, but we don't want that. We don't want that because we don't want this to go this side. What we want is for desalination, we want to get pure water from seawater. So we want water from this to this side to go the other side, the permeate side. So against this, this osmotic pressure, because there is an osmotic process involved, and this osmotic pressure actually pushes water from this side to this side so that the water level is same. Okay. So we say actually there is a chemical potential difference, and that is why there is a mixing of water. But we want to prevent this. So that is why an equivalent pressure is applied from this side so that this mixing is avoided. So that is what the process of reverse osmosis, RO membranes, RO process. That's what typically we are using nowadays, reverse osmosis. So here remember that we have to consume energy because we have to apply pressure, hydrostatic pressure higher than the osmotic pressure, so that there is no mixing of water from this fresh water to the seawater side. Okay, so we want some other technology, some other solutions, because we don't want to consume energy. Okay, so this is an energy intensive process. We always need some energy to transport water molecules from the seawater to freshwater side. So typically it is 40 to 80 bars in terms of pressure. It is 40 to 80 bars. Okay, so you have to consume that much energy. So people are trying to find ways to minimize this energy consumption, because we are talking about green economy. Obviously this energy consumption involves some emission of gases, carbon dioxide. You have to heat. I mean, how do you get this pressure, hydrostatic pressure? You have to have some kind of emissions, some kind of burning, some kind of heating, so that you get this hydrostatic pressure. So this is not a green technology. You don't want any energy to be supplied. You want the natural process to be, transporting this water from feed to permeate side. So maybe this capillary process, natural capillary process, where in trees, for example, trees are healthy, isn't it? They are taking water from the bottom from through the roots. They have capillaries and they are going to the, so they are actually taken, these trees are taking water from the through the roots from the ground. So there is a process already, there is a process, natural process is there. So can we use this kind of natural processes to have this energy or green economy, green technologies? So that is the aim actually. So that is the direction people are working on. So the idea is, main idea is to have good water flux and great ion rejection ratios. So for example, if you have more than 97%, it is fine actually, it is drinkable, already it's drinkable. So the main problem with graphene oxide is swelling. So some solutions are coming up, like mechanical support, just like the RO membranes, using dense laminates, thick laminates. So this is what we have done in one of the papers. I'll just share this one. So this is what we, yeah, so in this paper, actually, this is what we have done, graphene oxide membranes for ion saving. So we have used mechanical, method to control the spacing. So we could control the spacing. And this is what the title of the tunable sieving of ions using graphene oxide membranes. Okay. So let me go back. So you could control actually with various methods, mechanical support, using more dense laminates so that you have more stability, or even thick laminates. These are some suggestions, but this is what mainly done, mechanical support. So these are actually some work has been done, so but you have some other possibilities, and is evolving actually. Even this is also a problem. The van der Waals interaction is also a problem because it's a weak interaction. Once the layers are far apart, the interaction is very weak. So now you can also think, can we have some stronger interactions instead of van der Waals interactions? Can we have something else also? So that is another possibility. So you have to play with the interactions. So that is what the main research direction is. You need to understand the interactions, atomic level interactions, and then you can actually fine tune the structures. So that is the idea. That is what we generally, especially my group, is doing that. Okay, so I am almost done the laminates, the 2D channels. I think I fairly gave you an idea of what kind of interactions we want and what are the issues and what exciting physics or exciting technology you can bring in. So let's see now the zero-dimensional nanopores. Okay, I hope you understand what is nanopore. So maybe I can just show you what it look like. So nanopore is something, yeah. So do you see this? Can you see this slide?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So here you see, this is what graphene, see hexagonal structure. Do you see this? So this is actually transferred. Okay, you know how to make graphene, and you can peel one layer of graphene and put it on a silicon nitride membrane. Okay, silicon nitride is mechanically strong, and you can make, you can etch silicon nitride here. So now if you put somewhere, so this is actually, this one side is now one side of this membrane has a reservoir, and the other side also the other reservoir. So you can have the configuration which I have shown. You can have this membrane in between two reservoirs. Okay, so now see, now we know that there is no transport. If there is ideal graphene, there is no transport. So you have to drill something here, isn't it? So you have to drill a small hole. So this is what it is called the nanopore. Okay. So let me go back. So now you can drill a small hole on graphene, because perfect graphene is impermeable to all the gases, all the ions, okay, even for water molecules also. So no desalination, nothing, no transport even. So now how do you make hole? See, I also gave you already a hint that we need to make it small so that we can achieve selective separations. If you see the kinetic diameters of gaseous molecules, they are in the range of 3 to 5 Armstrong. If you see isotope separations, it's even very hard actually, because the separation between isotopes, hydrogen and deuterium, is really small. So you see, this is where we are heading to actually. Can we make it smaller and smaller, so that you can achieve, kind of sizes which are in the de Broglie wavelength ranges. So that is where we are heading to. So we want in like transistors, we said we want small. Small is beautiful. This world is all about the smallness. Nobody wants big, isn't it? Everybody wants small computers, small mobiles. Do you really want small mobiles or big mobiles? Do you agree that? Do you want small mobile or big mobile?
I think optimum size is good.
What do you mean by optimum? Is it pocket size?
No, if mobile is too small, then how you can work with that? If you are not able to see anything very clearly, unless or until the screen pop up in a ear, so you can visualize the things more clearly.
Okay.
Big
But you
mobile
can
is also
zoom.
not.
You can zoom it.
Yeah, zoom where? But if you if the screen of mobile is like in few centimeter, then how you can zoom anything?
Okay, very good. Yeah. All right. Okay. You said correctly. Optimum size. So Angit's optimum size will be different with from Kailash, isn't it?
But sir, the component size is getting smaller and smaller, sir. I think that is the thing what you want to say, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
Yeah.
So
So
everybody.
the main outcome may be big, but the component size is getting smaller and smaller, and the smaller it gets, the better it becomes.
Yes, the better performance, speed, everything.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, that is what the essence is. So everywhere actually, even membrane technology also, we are going into smaller and smaller. Okay. So that we can distinguish between even the smaller entities. Like isotopes are the almost the smallest, because two isotopes, if you see the size difference, it is actually in the sub-Armstrong, not even nanometers. So that kind of precision you want. So what I'm discussing now is all about the sizes. See, I'm not talking about something else. I'm not talking about electrostatic interactions. I'm dealing with sizes now. So this is essentially known as the molecular sieving. Okay. So you are discriminating molecules or ions based on the sizes. It's called size discrimination. So we want to make it smaller. So if you want to make a nanopore, okay, so nanopores are 0-dimensional. So if you take graphene and then you drill a small hole, the sizes are typically 5 to 10 nanometers. Nowadays you can make it even smaller than 1 nanometer also. Okay, so we are capable to do that. So typically, let's see what are the techniques used. Ion beam irradiation. You can bombard with gallium ions or helium ions. Even protons also. Electron beam is also another possibility. Oxygen plasma or any other plasma. I mean, you have to have some kind of etching or removal of the material. So suppose you made some nanopore. So these are the different ways one can make. Okay. So now the problem is, see, some techniques like ion beam irradiation and electron beam, you have to have some kind of blockage, some kind of mask, okay, to preferentially etch some regions. So oxygen plasma, it is quite random, some defects wherever you have some weak points, there it is strongly interacted and make it. So this process is actually not very, very uniform. It is actually very non-uniform process, not a controllable process. But with electron beam and ion beam, you can make it controllable. But only problem is the throughput. The efficiency is not that great. Okay, so you have to make one by one. So these are the problems, and obviously new techniques and new ideas are, is going on in this direction. So if you have some length, if the nanopore has some thickness, for example, one layer of graphene is ideally 0 dimensional, but if you have some like 10 nanometer of graphite, so then it is known as nanoporins. Instead of nanopores, it's known as nanoporins. So you will come across this name. So don't be scared. Actually, it has some length. In biology, it is known as aquaporins. Okay, so it has some 10 angstrom length. So this is actually nanopore, means your length or thickness is actually really small. So there's no hard definition, but if I compare with biology, there is an entity called aquaporins. So they have a thickness or length of 10 angstrom, is 1 nanometer. So this is known as nanoporins. So now the main attraction about nanopore is that it can selectively transport, molecules. So here an example is DNA molecule. So this is the double-stranded DNA. Are you seeing my screen? Maybe I make it bigger. Yeah. So this is what I am discussing now, DNA sequencing. Okay, I'll tell you what is the beauty of this, graphene. So here comes the thinness of membrane, because so this is actually the graphene membrane. We made a nanopore. Okay, say the diameter is 5 nanometer. So the diameter is 5 nanometer, and the DNA molecule size is around 2 nanometer. So it can easily go through. Okay, it can easily go through. And if you see DNA, if you zoom DNA, what you have? You have the 4 bases, isn't it? Adenine, guanine, maybe somewhere I mentioned here. Yeah, adenine, guanine, thymine, and cytosine. So they form base pairs. They are called the base pairs. So you have 2 base pairs. All right. So what you want, actually, you want to understand your evolution, isn't it? Gene, because gene is the culprit for everything. So you want to sequence. You want to understand your grandparents' gene and your gene. How is it arranged? So you want to control on the sequencing. You want to control. You want to understand the way it is arranged, these bases. Okay. So this is known as sequencing. Okay, how is it arranged? So these are the 4 bases. So this is a double-stranded DNA. Typically in experiments, people use single-stranded DNA. You can actually break this and you can make a single-stranded. So now I already gave you a hint that the size is actually 2 nanometer. Okay, this lateral size. Okay, length can be in tens of nanometers. Okay, you can have long chains also. So so now what happens? So this is the typical ion transport experiment. Okay, so you are actually trying to push the DNA molecules through the nanopore. Okay, so now let me explain to you what is the kind of experiment we are trying to do here. So in a typical ion transport measurement, so you have 2 reservoirs which are separated by a membrane which has a hole. For example, here nanopore. All right. So I said if this pore size is very small, then this cannot be transported. But assume that this is now 5 nanometer here. So this 5 nanometer is much larger than the hydrated diameters of the ions. Okay. So now if you apply a voltage, because they are ionized, they are the ionic solutions. If you apply voltage, you can actually move the ions across the nanopore. All right. Suppose if I apply a positive voltage here, then K plus will move from this direction to this side. Okay, and negative voltage will push chlorine minus to this direction. So we understand this process, isn't it? So and here this electronic, so this is electronic current here, external circuit, whereas in the solution it is ionic current. So ions actually, the positive and negative ions move across and they complete the circuit. So inside the solution we have ionic transport, whereas in the external circuit we have electronic current. Okay, and that completes the circuit. So we measure ionic current here. We measure the ionic current through this circuit. Okay, your electronic current is a reflection of the ionic current. So suppose if this is actually very small, then nothing can pass through, so you don't get any current. So this current will be very small. Okay, so this is actually, this current is a measure of the transport of ions. Okay, so this is exactly same. So now see this, the conductivity. So you can estimate the conductivity. Conductivity is nothing but, or conductance is nothing but, it is the ratio of the current divided by the applied voltage. So I by V. So now before putting a DNA, we can measure the ionic current. Okay, we know what is the conductance of this pore. So G is I by V. So this is also given by the conductivity into area divided by thickness. Okay, so smaller the thickness, your conductance is large. That is why thin membranes actually interesting, because that can give you very large conductance. So if this is actually a problem with carbon nanotubes, because if you have one carbon nanotube, then your conductance is going to be, because your actual area available is very small, your conductance is going to be very, very small, which you cannot measure. So in nanopore case, fortunately, because of the thickness, the conductance will be really high. But in the case of carbon nanotube, this is nothing but length. So length is actually microns or millimeters. So this is actually, conductance is going to be really small in the case of carbon nanotube. So that is the advantage of nanopore, that you can really measure the conductance of even a single nanopore. Okay, single nanopore is possible to measure the conductance of single nanopore. So now we already have the measure of the conductance without any DNA molecule. So now what happens after the DNA molecule? So once the DNA molecules is in between the nanopore, see, the actual area available is now reduced. So your conductance or current is going to be smaller. Okay, so now you can measure the conductance as a function of time. As soon as the DNA enters inside the nanopore, you will see a drop in current, because now the actual area available is smaller. Actual area available for the ions to be transported, okay, is smaller now. So because this is governed by this equation. Okay, so area is smaller now, your conductance will be smaller, because sigma is the conductivity of potassium chloride and the area is the area of the nanopore. Okay, so we assume it is a circular nanopore. So now it is because of the DNA molecule, the actual area available is smaller. So what you see, if you measure conductance as a function of time, you will see a pattern like this. See, as soon as the DNA enters into the nanopore, your current G is I by V. So we are keeping the same voltage. Okay, for a constant voltage, the conductance or the current look like, this. So it drops as soon as the DNA enters into nanopore, the current drops. Then once it comes out of the nanopore, it regains to the original value, and then a second DNA molecule enters, again drops. Okay, this is what happening. So now here there is no fine detail. See, it is just a DNA molecules entering, and then you see a drop in current. But now what if this DNA is really slowed down? Okay, you make it very slow. You really make it very small, very slow. And then what about this thickness is also very small. Okay. So graphene, fortunately for graphene, the thickness is 0.34 nanometer. And coincidentally, the distance between the base pairs, the distance between base pair is also 0.34 nanometer. It's very, I'd say it is just a coincidence. See, just 0.34 nanometer. So now if you have graphene, single layer graphene, the membrane thickness is 0.34 nanometer. Now when this DNA slow down, it can actually sense, which base pair is coming. So it can identify from one base to another base. So as soon as it just enters, it can actually distinguish the sequence. Okay. So that is why this is very interesting, because graphene nanopores can actually can sequence the DNA. Okay. So this is known as the DNA sequencing, and that is what widely, people are exploring. Can we understand the DNA? Can we sequence the DNA so that we can even cure some diseases which are, genetic? We say there is genetic, problems. Your family member has some problem and is carried, throughout the generations. Can we modify, this? If you understand well, you can modify it. So that is the process, of DNA sequencing. So these nanopore technologies are really, exciting, because they can actually be helpful to solve some of these problems. So now the assumption is that, see, DNA is negatively charged. So we should have, we should make the membrane such that there are no charges here. See, suppose if it is having some, some charge, because when you make it, you have edges. I mean, the process of making nanopore is kind of destructive. You are, destructively making this nanopore. So the edges are not, you have edges which are not, which are not perfect. So they always have some functional groups. So those can be charged. So if they are charged, then what will happen? This negatively charged DNA can be interacting with this. So this interaction will be a problem. So we assume that, we want graphene which are free from this functional groups or charges. So you want very clean graphene where the DNAs are not interacting, they just are slowed down. The passage, the transport is slowed down so that you can read each and every base pairs. Okay, so that is the way it has to be done. So DNA should not even fold also. You want single DNA molecule which is transported. You don't want folded DNAs. Okay, and if you have single stranded DNA, that will improve, because then this one, so you cut this one, then you don't have, so you have only one of the bases. So that's the way people try to do. So which is much more sensitive. Single stranded DNA will improve the sequencing. Okay, so these are the basic processes we have discussed now. DNA sequencing. So it is basically the understanding of the arrangement of bases inside the DNA. I hope you understood. So this you can extend to any other technologies, not only DNA sequencing, but other things also, like desilation also. Because if you make it smaller, see, right now it is not possible to have desilation because your size is too small, too big. But if you make it small, it's possible to have desilation or ion separations, different things you can do. But it's very hard to make it small. Okay, now let me go to the ion transport part, some physics. So essentially what I'm discussing is the nanofluidics. So nanofluidics means it is study of the fluidic properties. When the fluid is transported through nanoscale structures, or it is the study of the fluidic properties under nanoscale confinement. if you confine fluids, their behavior changes. For example, the dielectric constant, viscosity, mobility, these are all the parameters which is different in the nano range. Okay, so you can have this confinement can have lots of other changes introduced in the physical properties, physical as well as chemical. Reactions can also be changed, your catalysis. So there are different studies going on. Some people study, okay, under confinement, what happens to the reaction process, whether it is different. So many important, research is going on in that direction. So let me explain the physics in the ion transport. Okay, so I mentioned that these surfaces, the layers, graphene layers. So suppose these are the two graphene layers or graphene oxide layer, because we had the laminate structure. So suppose this is one of the graphene oxide layer, and this is another graphene oxide layer. And I said that there is a negative surface charge. There is a charge because of the functional groups. It is negatively charged. Okay, but if you take pure graphene, you can have a situation where you don't have any surface charge, or it is minimal. So surface charge is mainly coming from where? It can be because of impurities, it can be because of defects, or functional groups, or adsorption of OH minus ions, because it can absorb. OH minus ions can absorb on the surfaces. That can also give you negative charges. So predominantly, if you see surfaces, they are mostly negatively charged. Okay, naturally there are many systems, mostly they are negatively charged because of this, mainly because of OH minus adsorption. That is the main contributor of negative charge. In other cases, we have impurities, defects, etc. Okay, there you can control, but mostly it is about negative charge. So now what happens? Suppose you have the ion transport experiment. So in a bulk solution, if you take typical bulk solution, what you have, you say sodium chloride or potassium chloride. So you have equal number of positive and negative charges. So this is what it look like. Positive, negative, positive, negative. So this is a bulk solution. Okay, so this I call reservoir. So now this is the nano channel. So now what happens inside? This is what we are trying to understand. So now, and I assume that the surface has a negative charge. So if it has a negative surface charge, the positive ions from the solution, when it is transported, is attracted towards the surface. This is attracted towards the surface. So now what it tries to do is try to screen because any system, see, any system, if it is not electrostatically neutral, then system always tries to compensate it. Okay, so that is what is happening here. So all the positive ions are attracted, and it's trying to screen these ions, negative charges. So you have more positive ions to screen. So it all depends on the surface charge, how strong the surface charge is. Okay, so if you have more ions, you can screen completely. But if you have less ions, you cannot screen. So this will actually, the electric field will penetrate. So these charges will produce electric field. Okay, so it is called the potential. So it actually generates a potential which is screened by the opposite charges. So this is what electrostatic screening. So now if you see this picture, I mean, it has surface charges on both sides. So now if you see this picture, what you have, see, in the bulk you have equal number of positive and negative ions, but inside the nano channel you have excess of positive charge because of this surface charge. So you can use nanofluidics, nano channels, to enhance a particular ion concentration. So suppose you are doing some bio experiment and you want a particular molecule to be enhanced. For example, DNA is negatively charged. I'm just giving some example. So you want to actually increase the concentration of a particular entity. So nano channel is one of the effective ways of doing this. Okay. So this is known as the kind of concentration polarization. So you have or concentration enhancement. So inside the nano channel, because of the surface charge, your nano channel concentration is much larger than the bulk concentration. This is an important point you should remember. And also you see this one is a double layer charge. See, this is negative charge and this is the positive charge. So this is typically known as the electrostatic double layer, EDL. So you will come across this one, EDL. So this is actually a result of the shielding of the surface charge potential. So I'm just giving you some, kind of derivation here. What is how long this can go? How far this electrostatic potential can remain. So it all depends on the concentration here. But what is that governing physics? So that is what I have tried here to estimate. So this is estimated obviously because of the based on the Poisson's equation, Poisson's law. Okay, any charge can give some potentials. So if we say that okay, these positive charges are giving kind of a mean field potential. So this is what the equation is. Del square phi is equal to rho by epsilon 0. So I can treat this as something like, so in the form of chemical potentials, I can say that this is related to chemical potential. So the chemical potential of any ion inside a solution is given by this equation. So this chemical potential actually depends on the concentration, see, ln Ci. So this is similar to the Fermi level. So in solutions, we have the chemical potential, and then corresponding to that, we have some kind of potential energy also. Okay. So now we are trying to understand how far this field can penetrate. So we are just trying to estimate based on the Poisson's equation. In fact, you will see that this is actually Poisson-Boltzmann equation, because we are trying to get the distribution of charges, because there will be a charge which is not affected by the surface charge, and there will be a region where the surface charge is affecting the concentration. Okay, so there is a distribution of concentration. It's not same everywhere, because here the concentration is more, but in the bulk it will be same. So you can rewrite this rho, the charge density, as like this: Zi E into Ci. So where C is the concentration of a particular ion and Z is the valence. For example, if you have potassium chloride, you have K plus and Cl minus. So your concentration is, you have 1 K plus and 1 Cl minus, and the valence is, for K plus it is +1 and Cl minus it is -1. So this is the total one. So if you have a binary electrolyte like KCl, you can calculate what is the total charge density because of these two ions. Okay, and it depends on the concentration. So obviously there is a charge distribution, I mentioned concentration distribution, that is governed by the Poisson, the Boltzmann distribution. So if we assume that this is governed by the Boltzmann distribution, then we can write this way. And we also assume that this phi is very small, very smaller than kBT by Zi. Okay. So this Ci is the kind of reference concentration or bulk concentration. We say that near the nano channel, this is affected. There is a distribution, and that distribution is actually governed by the potential and the temperature. Okay. Or if I say at constant temperature, the concentration is affected by the potential of the surface charge. So the concentration is not uniform. If I draw a line across this, if I draw a line across this, see here, for example, if complete screening has been done, then here you will see positive and negative, because shielding has been done. So the number of positive ions is less here compared to here, this region. So there is a distribution actually, which is governed by the Boltzmann distribution. So you can actually simplify this for a binary electrode like ZZ, like +1 -1. Or if you take calcium chloride, then it is actually Z to Z, that kind of configuration. So we are taking a simple case of symmetric electrolyte. Then if you substitute this, then what you get is something like this. The exponential, you have exponential expression. Then here you have +1 and +1, because you have two valencies. That will give you sin H. Okay, sin H values. So now if you assume that your phi, which is much smaller than kBt by Ze, that's what our assumption is. If you write it like this, then you can simplify this. Okay, you can write, I have explained here, you can just go through. Then what you get is something like this. So this we are very familiar with. So we can rewrite this as 1 by lambda d square phi, because then you can write this as an exponential a decaying function. So this is what the lambda d, this is known as the Debye length. I think you are very familiar with this. I just discussed in terms of the solutions, but this is true for solids also. Okay. So now this lambda d is inversely proportional to the square root of the concentration. It has the dielectric constant also here. So you can see the expression and find, see what are the parameters which are affecting. Temperature is there, dielectric constant is there, your valence Z is also an important, point. Then concentration.
Excuse me, sir. What is 40? What is 40? 40.
Which one?
This is
that is 47 actually, page number.
Oh, sorry. That one. There was a page, 47 page. Yes.
Okay. Is there a limitation on the temperature in which this process is guided?
See, this one I said like this condition, this phi has to be kBt by Zi. So if you see at room temperature, so this quantity is 25 millivolt.
Yes, sir.
So this is what the condition, the phi has to be much smaller than 25 millivolt. Okay. So that is a condition. You got it?
Yes, sir.
So it essentially means that you can't discuss this physics if you have voltages, if you have surface potentials which is much larger than this. So if you, for example, if you want to apply very high effective potential, high effective voltage, then this is not a very good option. You understand? So you have to have some modification on this one. So we said this is actually a simplified version, that as long as our applied voltage is much smaller than this phi, this is the potential. So this is the potential of the surface charge or the charges. So this is the potential generated by the charges. Sometimes we call it a zeta potential. if you, some of you know the name, we call this as a zeta potential, that surface charge generates some voltage. So all these physics, whatever the discussion is happening, if you have smaller surface charges, okay, so it should be much smaller than the thermal voltage. So your thermal voltage is, so this is actually 25 millielectron volt. I think you know that, isn't it? So KBT at room temperature is 25 millielectron volt. So if your surface charge, the surface potential is much smaller than this, this value, then the physics, whatever we are discussing, is correct. Okay. So then we can talk about the Debye length or screening length, which is inversely proportional to the concentration. So your lambda d is very small for higher concentrations, because your concentration is high means your Debye length is smaller. Or if you have a smaller concentration, your Debye length is larger. So what it essentially means is, so this shielding is not perfect. If you have lower concentrations, your lambda d, lambda d is actually the how far this potential penetrates into the solution. Okay, because of this, see, if your field is penetrating, that means you need more charges to screen. Or if you don't have so many of these charges, the incoming charges will experience this electrostatic force. That's what it means. Okay, so if you have enough ions, then those ions will screen. So if your lambda d is smaller, means you have the ions, your large concentration ions actually screens this potential. Therefore, there is no electrostatic effect. So the incoming ions will see an electrostatic effect, the effect of surface charge, only if the concentration is smaller. So you will tend to see electrostatic effects due to surface charge at low concentrations than higher concentrations. Okay. So this concentration enhancement, is seen at lower concentrations. Okay, because at higher concentrations, you essentially have, at higher concentration, you only have this few layers which all screens the surface charge. So you will see electrostatic effect only at low concentrations. So incoming ions will experience the electrostatic effect at low concentrations. I hope this is clear. Did you understand? I mean, this is similar to what we have in the solid state. So you have some charge, and then you are trying to screen that charge. So you can, if you have more charges, then you can screen it better. The electrostatic effect will be negligible. But if you have less number of charges to screen, then you will see a dominant electrostatic effect. All right. So that is what it essentially means. So in summary, what I want to say is that you can use your nanochannel to enhance the concentration of a particular species. So now if I just give you the plot, the concentration, the conductance versus concentration curve. So you might ask, how do you estimate the surface charge? So typically, how is it done? So I mentioned that if you have higher concentration, you don't see surface charge because it is screened. So you have to really go down to the low concentration so that you can see surface charge. So now if I say your conductance, see, I can explain based on this. When you have low concentration, when you have low concentration, your conductance, the conductance through this channel is governed by the surface charge. The surface charge will decide how many ions can be transported, because it is actually interacting with this. But if you have higher concentration, that means higher concentration means you don't see the effect of surface charge. So the whatever the ions which are going is not, it is independent of surface charge. So it only sees the actual area of the channel which we discussed. So it is governed by the bulk conductance. So this is what the, I forgot to write the surface charge conductance. So this is the bulk conductance. So this is what typically it looked like, the bulk conductance. Okay. When you go to lower concentrations, your surface charge is really seen in the form of surface charge conductance. So your conductance is controlled by the surface charge at low concentrations, whereas at a high concentration, you don't see the surface charge because it is screened by the charges, the ion. It's screened by the ions. So you can actually effectively measure the surface charge concentration by measuring the conductance versus concentration curve. At low concentration, it actually saturates. It seems like there is some constant thing which is making it the concentration, the conductance constant. It is similar to what in electrical transport measurements you see. In electrical transport measurements, the curves finally saturates. So this saturation is actually a measure of the defect concentration, because defect is independent of. So if I plot the resistivity or conductivity as a function of temperature, in the case of electrical transport, we do resistivity or conductivity as a function of temperature. At low temperature, you see that it saturates. So this is governed by the number of defects present in the sample, okay, or impurities. So in the case of ion transport, this is actually the surface charge concentration. So I don't know the actual form of the surface charge, but what I am saying is this is actually the surface charge concentration. It could be impurities, it could be defects, other entities. But this can tell me what is the concentration of the surface charge. So from here you can estimate the surface charge concentration. Okay, so this is what the nano channel transport is all about. So you can estimate surface charge, and this can control the concentration inside the nanofluidic channel. So this is what you typically do. Concentration both say same, and then you have surface charge, it is transported, and then you measure the conductance. Okay. Actually, we could have finished all these sections if we had 3 to 4 more lectures, but unfortunately we don't have. We are short of 3 to 4 lectures. I just give you in 10-15 minutes, some 1 or 2 points. So this nano, these systems has much more significance, not only in this, this enhancing the concentration of a particular species or DNA sequencing, desalination. There are other things like, for example, you can generate energy. You can generate energy. This is something called known as blue energy. So when you say blue, maybe you will naturally, think about oceans. So it has been found, it has been observed that when the seawater and fresh water is mixed at this interface, there is a generation of osmotic pressure. Is it right? I mean, seawater has salt and less water, and the fresh water has more water but no ions. So we know that there is a pressure. So this pressure is actually an energy source, green energy source, because there is no reactions, nothing. So people actually theoretically, actually long back, it has been predicted that we can actually use this, as the one of the best green energy, because we are talking about green energy, green economy. So this could be one of the sources of energy, and people are trying to invent new ways of tapping this energy, because if you mix seawater and fresh water, you cannot tap it actually. You know that there is osmotic pressure, but you cannot really use it. Okay, lately people have invented other techniques, smaller, membranes, smaller structures, where you can tap this osmotic pressure. Because osmotic pressure, normally what happens, the water from the fresh side goes to the other side. So your water level will rise, so it pushes. So that you can use, if you have a nano system, you can use that pressure you can use. So you need some kind of constricted structure, or if you have some kind of membranes where you really make it small so that water doesn't pass through. Okay, water feels the pressure. So then what is the other possibility? The other possibility is actually the ions has to be, to compensate this pressure, the iron has to be transported. So in this case, what you have is some kind of voltage generation. I mean, this is a kind of energy you have. So blue energy is all about the separation of ions, or it's about the separation of, or it's about the pressure. Okay, there are different methods, different forms of blue energy, but essentially you can use this because we already found that we can actually separate ions using the surface charge concept. We can actually use this this technique, this understanding to separate ions and to generate the voltage. Okay, voltage and current. So you can generate power if you have both voltage and current. So nano currents and some voltage. So that will give you some powers, which is very high actually. So people are investing a lot in this area, that you can use nano systems to generate energy. So that is one point. Other point is, maybe in 10 minutes I will explain the other one. Let me share. No, it's okay. Can you see my slide?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Somehow my mouse got some problem. I think what's the problem? Okay. So are you seeing my PPT?
Yes, sir.
Okay, but why? Just a minute. Okay, I think this is good. So this is, yeah. So this is one of the, I already explained this one, the hydride diameters. Okay. So these are the different, sizes of, various sizes of molecules. DNA, DNA diameter, I mentioned is 2 nanometer. But you can have other also, HIV virus, ribosome. So you can use these membranes, to separate, filter out certain things. So we have naturally occurring aquaporin channels. I mentioned to you aquaporins. So they have some length. So these are protein channels. See, this is already doing wonder in our kidney channels. So in many other systems, many other creatures. So you see here, this is actually, the size is very small. It's something like 3 Armstrong diameter. So this is a hydrophobic channel. This only permeate water molecules, nothing else. Even protons also cannot be transported, no ions. Only water molecules are selectively transported. See, nature is also always wonderful, isn't it? Because it's already existing, and we engineers and scientists are struggling to make this kind of membranes. So we are inspired by this. Nature has already an example of water selective pores, aquaporins. It only permeate water molecules, nothing else. So what matters here is again the size. The size is around 3 angstrom. I'm not going to explain this. So, but so what we are trying to do, I mean, the work I have done at University of Manchester, that we were thinking like, can we have some structure, some technique where I can design membranes of all sizes of my choice. For example, I want to filter out DNA, or I want to filter out ribosome or HIV virus. Can I make it so flexible that I can just design? Obviously, you will think about lithography. Yes, lithography is a technique where you can vary your sizes easily. Okay, so that is what we also thought. But then, how can you make it so small? Like, for example, I want to make it 1 nanometer. Is it possible to make such a structure with lithography? It is almost impossible. So then we came with this idea that, okay, why don't we use the thickness of the 2D materials? Because thickness is actually very small. You can go to 3.34 nanometer. So that is the idea. And we ended up making fluidic channels or membranes with lithography and 2D materials. Okay, so let me just give you an idea about what is the existing lithographic pattern. So this is what people have achieved. So they can make something like 2 nanometer channels. The height is 2 nanometer. So this is a 2D channel. So this is actually explained in the Nature Nanotechnology paper. So this is the smallest ever man-made. Okay, so this is the smallest fluidic channel. So the height is around 2 nanometer, because surface roughness is actually limiting this. You cannot go beyond this. You cannot make it smaller than this with lithography techniques. Okay. So what our idea was to use these membranes. Okay, we are very familiar with this. I'm not discussing this. Okay, these are the different structures, the pores. See, this is on graphene. On MOS2 also you can make pores, nanopores. Then this is the carbon nanotube, 1-dimensional carbon nanotube, boron nitride nanotube. Then these are 2D laminates, graphene oxide laminates. See the laminates which we have discussed. Okay, so there are a lot of problems with this. Okay, because wide size distribution, large charge densities. Then the pore sizes are also very different. Okay, so let me explain this one. This is the only thing I am going to explain, but otherwise the physics already explained. So we used silicon nitride substrate, and then so this is what it looked like, and made a hole at the center. So this is a silicon nitride membrane on silicon. So this transparent region is a silicon nitride membrane. At the center there is a hole made. Okay, so this is what the side view look like. This is a top view, and the side view look like this. So there is no silicon here, but silicon should have been there. But it is a through hole, through silicon. Okay, the hole is through silicon also. So now you transfer the graphite lines, the bottom graphite. There is a layer of something like 5 to 10 nanometer of graphite. You transfer. Okay, you transfer the graphite. Then what you do? You make graphene lines by electron beam lithography and oxygen plasma. You can etch in between the graphene, and then you can make graphene lines. Okay, so this is a graphene line. So you can transfer these lines using polymer that we have. We know how to make heterostructures. We have learned from the heterostructure fabrication that we can transfer one of the flake to other. So we have used the same technique, and we transfer these lines on top of the graphite. Then comes the next step. So we can actually etch from the back side. You can etch and you cut from the middle. Then you transfer the top graphite. Okay, so now what you made, so from the side view, each of this, see, I have actually expanded this region. So this region look like this, side view. See, this is the bottom graphite, and these are graphene lines. In between there is no graphene because we have etched using oxygen plasma. And then there's top graphite. So now you see the height of the channel, you can control. You can control the height from one layer to any number of layers. Okay, so that is the beauty of this channel. So we made the first, first ultimate membranes, ultimate channels, because you can even make the channel 0.34 nanometer thick, because that is the thickness of graphene. So this is very similar to what aquaporin's sizes, aquaporin channel sizes. For the first time, we could actually, show that we could even come close to biological channels. So that is why it has been published in some, top journals. So this is what essentially the fabrication technology that we have used. So it is actually using the good quality of lithography and the membrane, the exfoliation technique. So you can now, this is just not about graphene. You can expand this one to any other 2D materials. For example, you have a ferroelectric material here or a piezoelectric material here, and this one can be magnetic. So you can think of any kind of configurations. Okay, and this width is actually around 130 nanometer. So this is limited by the resolution of the electron beam lithography, but you can have, the similar way, like heterostructures, you can make any combinations. So here also these fluidic channels you can make in, any combinations. So this is why we can have, several kinds of channels. Okay, so I think I almost gave you. So these are 2D channels, just like laminates. These are 2D channels. So I'm almost done actually. I think I'm almost finished my time. Yes. If you have any questions, please. Actually, we are short of some 3-4 lectures. It would have been very nice. I hope I did not rush too much the last few lectures. I hope you understood. If you have any questions, please mail me, or we can have Google Meet or Zoom. If you are interested, we can even discuss. Okay. If you have any questions, please. If not,
No question, sir.
yeah. Some of you have not filled the time on 21st. Could you please fill the time for 21st?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, because I have seen, I have just assigned 21st, but I have seen that nobody has actually mentioned the time. So please, okay. Otherwise,
Yes,
I'll
sir.
call at my convenience if you don't.
Yes.
Because then that will be a problem for you, isn't it? Suddenly you are.
Today's last lecture, no, sir?
Yes, we are saying goodbye to you.
Thank you, sir, for the lecture.
Alvida.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Alvida.
Alvida.
Bye bye.
Bye, sir.
Bye, sir.